Well, Hungary has for years been criticised in the West for its approach to immigration. Its Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, said Central Europe is the continent's last migrant-free zone and that Europe needs to be safe, civic, Christian and free. It's a sentiment at odds with mainstream politics in much of Europe. Earlier, I spoke to the Hungarian Secretary of State for Public Diplomacy, Zoltan Kovacs, and I started by asking him what it is about migration that he's afraid of.
It's an uncontrolled and apparently unstoppable form of migration. It's illegal migration per se. We've seen altogether almost 2 million people arriving to Europe in less than 2 years. And that's an alarming issue, especially if it's related to those areas and to those events that are surrounding Europe. Civil war.
Do you mean Muslims?
No, I mean civil war areas from where potential terrorists are coming. And as a matter of fact, we all know that the perpetrators of the Paris or the Belgian attacks did come through the illegal migration way.
So we are talking about Muslim countries and Muslim people. Those are the people you most object to, aren't they?
You know, we are very frank on that issue because indeed we don't go away from the discussion or naming this as a problem. We believe that the large-scale migration of a different culture into the European continent is a problem.
Why? I mean, what do you mean by a different culture?
Because if you take a look around the globe, civilizations, if you like, larger countries, the United States, China, Japan, Australia, all have their nature, their own characteristics. And Europe's characteristics are different.
Do you mean Christian, or do you mean white, or do you mean what do you mean?
No, we mean Christianity at the core of this phenomenon, which is not necessarily religious,
For Europe?
but cultural.
I mean, that's not really a sort of a fundamental of Europe, is it?
Oh yes, it is. Take a look at back
legally or
no,
democratically. I mean,
take a look at back even for European integration. The very foundations, the very ideas for European integration are having their origins in Christianity. Trying to keep the original face, the original nature of the European continent is essential for us.
I mean, by face again. I mean, I don't want to skirt around this. You say we're very openly sort of anti-Muslim in terms of coming into Europe. You're talking about white people as well, aren't you?
No, it's but again, I mean, don't try to make it as a racial or a religious issue. But it's Christianity, if you like, the Greco-Roman, Judeo-Christian inheritance.
Christian culture, rather than the religious.
It's a cultural environment which is a guarantee for everything you believe is European. The form of democracy, the working of our institutions.
Differs from Muslim culture if you take out the religion?
Well, I think there are evident differences. And this is not about inferiority or superiority. The differences are there. And again, we believe that those differences are unbridgeable.
And you don't want them?
We don't want to face the very same problems we see many parts of Western Europe facing.
So you must be very sympathetic to those people in Britain who don't like the idea of Hungarians coming here?
Within the European Union, you know, one of the 4 fundamental freedoms ensure the freedom of movement, the freedom of settlement. Accordingly, the freedom of, say, Central and Eastern Europeans to come here in Britain, work here, and eventually go back or establish their lives here. It shouldn't be mixed up with third party, that is non-European migration.
But you were talking about culture before, and that's what I'm talking about. I mean, you know, culturally, a lot of the Brexit debate was about how British culture is being diluted by people from countries like Hungary. What's the difference? You know,
we learned one lesson, that we don't interfere with the internal debates of any European country. So it should be your internal debate to differentiate between, say, East and Central European people.
So it doesn't offend you? It doesn't offend you that British people would find Hungarians as a dilution to British culture? It doesn't feel nice, does it? When you're on the receiving end?
It doesn't feel nice, but again, keep in mind that within Europe, the distribution of responsibilities, the flow of workforce is not a new couple of years old, but rather decades or rather centuries old phenomenon.
It makes you wonder, though, if you don't like migration, why are you in the European Union?
Well, because the European Union is not about migration. I mean, migration obviously is
freedom of movement is a fundamental, isn't it?
Yes, but the freedom of movement is for European citizens, it's not for third-party citizens or those who are trying to come to Europe as illegal migrants.
But I mean, you wouldn't presumably like British Muslims to go to Hungary either, would you, under freedom of movement? Because it's the cultural bit that you object to, not the fact that...
You have to differentiate. Let's talk straight on that issue. When we talk about European citizens, the freedom of movement is there for everyone. We don't differentiate. Again, it's not about religion. It's about the nature of the continent. It's about the cultural pattern we have to preserve to be able to remain Europeans. In that, there's a place for Muslims. There's a place for all other religions.
What is the place for Muslims if it's not Hungary?
It's a natural place for us, for every human being. So
Where?
it's again.
Geographically, I mean.
Geographically,
If you say we don't want them in Hungary,
we don't talk about
where is it okay for them to be?
We do have a small Muslim minority, a religious minority in Hungary, so they have a place in Hungary, very obviously. Don't try to make it a religious issue. Again, it's a cultural issue.
But you made
it's the way we organize our lives, and we like to preserve it, and that's it. It's very simple.
I mean, given this sort of sympathy that you have with people who want control of their borders, you must think Brexit's a good idea.
Now, as a matter of fact, I think the Prime Minister was the only Prime Minister in Europe who has posted an advertisement just a couple of days before the Brexit vote to tell that it's your business how you decide, but we would like you, or rather wanted you, to stay because that makes the European Union stronger.
Your leader was also very keen to tell David Cameron not to treat Hungarians in Britain as parasites. Isn't there a danger that you will treat migrants or are treating migrants to Hungary as parasites?
You know, one element of your argumentation is a little bit disturbing because you're trying to pull together or bring together different layers of argument here. When you talk about illegal migration, people coming in great numbers without consent, without permission to the soil of Europe, we are not talking about the same thing when we talk about, say, Hungarians coming here, working here in the UK with other Central Europeans in great numbers, contributing to your GDP, working very hard because they are European citizens. So don't try to argue for me that this is the same. I mean, internal movement, free movement of people and goods is the same as illegal migration.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.